All right, let's do it, Steve. It's another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. We're wrapping up what was a very enjoyable Sunday night football for Kansas City Chiefs fans. I think coming into this game that ended up 41-14 in favor, Steve, I'm gonna say it for you. The first place Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC West. Amazing that we're even saying those words. They win 41-14 over the Las Vegas Raiders. And it wasn't one of these games where you come out of it 13-7 and you don't really know what to think about the Kansas City Chiefs. This was a situation where you went in and you not only needed to see them beat the Las Vegas Raiders, but you wanted to see them do it in a way where they looked like themselves, especially against a formidable opponent. The Raiders had proven to be that so far this year. Granted, everyone seems to have a bad loss in the AFC, except for really the Chiefs. That's a conversation for another day. But they're 5-3 coming to this game. The fan base is ramped up. They're in Vegas. This is a pretty good football team. I understand that they've had some crazy stuff happen off the field leading into this game. But the Kansas City Chiefs, you didn't really know what they were. And I came out of the game, and I thought the key point of it, and I said this in my rapid reaction, you could read right now for arrowheadpride.com. I think Chris Collinsworth's words of saying they're finally doing what they've talked about for months, for weeks. We have wondered, when are the Chiefs finally going to put it together and actually do what they've been talking about, have better pocket presence for Patrick Mahomes, manage the offense better, take what's there in front of them. They were able to do that. And then you saw the bigger plays opening themselves up as the game went along. I tweeted this out. I don't think Patrick Mahomes was necessarily fixed. I think we're finally seeing a new version of Patrick Mahomes where this in-season work is paying off. Steve, I know you got a play that you want to play for everybody. Why don't you hit it? Go ahead.
Mahomes, ton of time.
Look at this.
Escapes. Goes to the end zone. It's
Daryl.
Williams there, and he makes the grab.
That's what kind of night it was. It was Patrick Mahomes doing what we were used to in previous years because the Chiefs built to that as the game went along. And then you get Darrell Williams high pointing a ball. You get Noah Gray scoring a touchdown. We haven't said Noah Gray and his name since it was August. It was hot out. I couldn't wear this because it was too hot. That's the last time we were talking about Noah Gray. And just this feel of, okay, Patrick Mahomes and this offense, they can still have their way with you. And I know we got to talk about the defense, but I want you to be able to give your comments on the offense as well, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we've been talking about for weeks, right? It's that the Chiefs simply weren't adjusting offensively for weeks. And we were like, you got to run the ball more. You got to work in the short intermediate stuff, and that'll open up the big plays down the football field. And I saw you tweet this, Pete, and I mentioned it multiple times on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network this past week, and all the interviews that I did on Raiders podcasts and stuff this week. I said that Andy Reid needed to dust off the Alex Smith playbook, and I thought we got a big dose of that tonight, where especially early in the football game. I mean, Darrell, yeah, I didn't know Darrell had that high point grab in him. That was awesome to see from Darrell Williams. But he had 9 catches. He had 9 catches for 101 yards. Like,
yeah,
I didn't have time to go back and look at it, but I don't know when the last time was a Chiefs running back had over 100 receiving yards. Maybe Damian Williams. I would imagine you'd have to go back as far as Kareem Hunt to have a Chiefs running back with over 100 receiving yards.
It was finally what we've been asking for. I know, granted, it only ended up being, I believe it was 11 carries for Darrell. But as far as running back involvement, the Chiefs had to, at some point, commit to being boring to an extent, where it was bringing back that Alex Smith playbook, where you see the screen game, where you have the screen to Travis Kelce and the screen to Darrell Williams, and you're running shallow crosses, and you're playing in that I would say 7-yard to 15-yard range, and you're letting Travis Kelce, and this was weird to me too. It seemed like the Raiders were okay with Travis Kelce having free releases, but when Travis Kelce is able to play with free releases, he's going to find that soft spot. You were finally seeing that mind meld that you have between Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce really take place. And then as you're as you're committing, I should say, to the run game, that begins to open up things for Tyreek Hill, right? It seemed like madness because we would come out of Eric Bieniemy's press conferences and Andy Reid's press conferences, and the same thing to an extent with Mahomes, and be like, man, we have just had this same press conference like 6 weeks in a row. When it was it finally going to click? And to me, this was the first night where you felt like, okay, all of this stuff that we have been discussing, it's clicking here. Now, again, this is 1 week, and this is, I thought, a good team right now in the Raiders. You're able to do it against them. What's waiting for you is a real test in a Dallas Cowboys team that looked fantastic as well. And so this just gets even more interesting, but we have to stay with the game tonight. And I want to discuss the defense as well. As the offense is finally figuring it out, you had back-to-back games, granted against Daniel Jones and Jordan Love, where the defense looked especially good. I thought that they continued that tonight. Now, there was that one broken play in the second half where Anthony Hitchens was guarding Brian Edwards, which we are not football coaches, Steve. We just watch this thing and do podcasts about it, right? But like, we know not to have Anthony Hitchens single coverage against Brian Edwards. Like, that's not going to be a good result for you. So granted, there were going to be broken plays like that. And I think you take that touchdown away. And this was a fantastic night for the defense as well. We had stars of this team, Jaron Reed and Daniel Sorensen, fan favorites. One was able to get a sack. Another had an interception in this game. You saw consistent pressure. I thought, I don't think Derek Carr was exactly comfortable, maybe a little bit more early in the game, but as the pressure began building, and this is why the whole thing works with each other, like this big ecosystem. It's like, okay, now the offense is putting up points. The Raiders, though, okay, you might have wanted to see a little bit more pressure on Derek Carr, but now they have to start pressing themselves. And like, it's that old school Chiefs thing that we haven't seen in so long, where because the offense is finding a way to score at will, now the Raiders offense starts pressing, and it resulted in what were turnovers. That play by Rashad Fenton, play of the night, might be the play of the year. I know this ended up being a complete blowout, but the game was still up for grabs at that point. And that seemed like, okay, maybe this will be a shootout where it's going to be Mahomes and Carr blow for blow. I don't know what Deshaun was doing on the play. Now, this is his first game with the Raiders, and this is kind of his first game getting back into the mix. Didn't seem like once he came down with it, he knew where he was, but heads up play by Rashad Fenton, who has been fantastic. I know the PFF grades have finally reflected how good he's been for the Chiefs this year, but knocking that ball, that is such a timely play that essentially changed the game. And we've talked about quicksand in the Chiefs' losses this year. This was a quicksand game for the Raiders, where all of a sudden one thing went wrong, then another thing went wrong, then another thing went wrong, and the Chiefs were able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's Rashad Fenton. You know, we love him on Show and BK, and we've been raving about Rashad Fenton. We need more Rashad Fenton. Deshaun Jackson, I feel like that's just a Deshaun Jackson play. Like, he always makes it as difficult
as Deshaun
possible.
Give and he taketh away, as they say.
It's so I don't think that play was that crazy, but yeah, that's the type of play that the Chiefs defense wasn't making early in the season. And Deshaun Jackson, maybe that play is totally on him, but it's such a heads up play. And you can point to the rise in Rashad Fenton snap counts as to when that secondary really started to take a turn this year. It is Juan Thornhill too, and Daniel Sorensen not playing as much. But as soon as Rashad Fenton, they stopped playing Mike Hughes because he was getting burned by everybody, and they put Rashad Fenton in the game, and he has been nothing but spectacular for the Chiefs secondary. He's been a huge for them.
You said his name, so I have to bring it up. Mike Hughes. Let me just say something. I like Mike Hughes. I think he is a good role player when it comes to the defense of this team. You can't let the punter force a fumble on you. We'll get back to that in a second. Here's Andy Reid talking after this big Chiefs win.
I did a solid job the whole night, and then you add in the fake punt, which was great. I mean, that helps keep people off balance just a bit. Dave had a nice plan for him. EB had a nice plan offensively, and then Spags defensively. It was a solid performance all the way around. For that time, yours.
You elaborate on the fake punt. That's a pretty risky call at that point in the game, but you made it work.
Yeah, well, we saw that it was available, and so they were cheating back a bit, and you've got a punter that can throw the ball, and he does it every day in practice, and you've got camp out there who's a good receiver. So, yeah, there's a risk involved, but we thought the benefit was even greater. I mean, so.
Andy, you thought you were pretty close to some breakthroughs, but how different and reassuring does it feel to see it all kind of come together in a game like this?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's such a rivalry between the Raiders and the Chiefs, so it's a it's obviously a good one to get for the guys. Rich on the other side of it is battling his tail off, and so are his players. So working through all of this, and but listen, it's a good one to get against a talented football team, and we've got so much room to improve still, and but we have a little bit of season left to do that. So we're going to keep chopping away at this thing and making ourselves the best we can be as it goes on.
What to say about your team? Obviously, you had a slow and a rough start over the last couple of months to now be in first place in the AFC West.
Yeah, so that's good for today, and then you got to get back on it and get going. I mean, I appreciate you saying it, but you're just as in this league. You're just as good as your next game, and we're seeing this every Sunday and Thursdays and Monday nights. The parity in this league is ridiculous, and so you have to stay on your game, and you have to continue to work to get better and eliminate some of the mistakes that we had tonight. I mean, you got to keep that going and enjoy it because they're hard to get, but just know where you're at and what this league's all about right now.
And Coach, what about Patrick tonight and the rhythm that he was in, especially considering the pass block?
Yeah. Well, Gus Bradley does a heck of a job defensively, and they've got talent on that side of the ball. And they've gotten Pat a couple different times, and so I thought he just was so disciplined and how he handled everything with the football, and then in the run game making that work too. And the offensive line, that's a good defensive front. They did a nice job of protecting them.
And speaking of the offensive line, Andrew Wally is the third right tackle. Obviously, he knows Max from where they played together in college, but what did he do well, and how much was he part of how you guys were functioning?
Yeah.
He could handle that.
They got after each other. I mean, that was kind of fun to watch that. So, and the effort was intense there on both guys. Crosby, he's a good football player. But yeah, it was good to see. I mean, to have that, to have him here means a lot, especially when you've been a starter. To stay strong mentally, to be able to step in and do that, my hat's off to him on that.
Two questions. One real quick. Tyron didn't finish the game either. Was that not an injury?
I took everybody out. Tyron, I don't know, he might have an ankle or a little something, but I took them all out at that time. So I don't think it's anything serious.
And the second thing is, it seemed like the Raiders played a lot more single safety stuff, maybe some cover 3 than what you see from other teams playing those deep shells. I assume you guys still work on that, even though you really haven't seen much of it.
Yeah, he blended it a little bit. So between cover 4 and single safety middle zone, and listen, that's kind of where the whole thing started. So they've done a good job against us the last few years, and so just playing zone. But he mixed it in. He mixed a little bit of quarters. He mixed some heavy 3, and then man to man with different doubles taking place. So he had a nice game plan on that.
I hope I ask this in a way that makes sense, but people are talking like the Chiefs back, that kind of thing. I'm just wondering from your point of view, is it more about sort of not 19, not 20, but sort of chasing the identity?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That you have to develop your own personality. Every team's different every year. And so, yeah, you can't worry about the expectations and all that stuff. You got to get down to the nitty gritty and build it. And so our guys have kind of done that, and they're getting to know each other better. And we've got to keep plugging away, so it's a good one to get though. But I think you're probably spot on that. Yeah.
Andy, Pat was in the first sort of prolonged slump or whatever you want to call his career. What did you see from him that told you he was going to sooner or later come out on the other side?
Yeah, so listen, Adam, I mean, Frazier does a million different studies for us, right? And Pat's lasted longer than any quarterback in the history of the game without a slump, right? And so it's going to happen. There's going to be a little something that it doesn't go your way. And it's important that you power through it, stay confident, and, keep firing. And so that's how he's wired. And you knew he was going to get through the ups and downs just by the way he handles himself. And that's what we're all watching it, right? So.
You said early on this season that you'd be happy when all three phases are playing, together on one court. How important is that to do that?
Yeah, listen, this probably goes for any team in this league, but if all three phases are clicking, then you're going to be tough to stop. So, but we're coming out of this, and we've got room to improve. And these guys they believe in that. They think that's how they come out to practice. They've got a confidence about them, but they understand that if we put it all together, then good things can happen. So.
Last three. Coach, I'd love to talk a little bit more about the offensive line, especially with Randall Brown. 2 weeks ago against the Titans, a couple weeks ago, they gave him 4 sacks. The last couple of weeks, they've only given up 1 sack and they kept Patrick clean. How comfortable are you seeing Patrick behind this offensive line?
Well, you guys asked us during training camp. I mean, it takes a little bit of time for those guys to gel. It's 5 guys all kind of dancing the same dance, and they've got it takes time. It takes snaps, and so they're working through everything that they need to. They've got a great attitude about them. Heck is a heck of a football coach, no pun intended. So we just keep pounding through this.
Last two, Jarrett and Nate.
Just backtracking for a second. When you think about kind of how the game flowed, the ebb and flow of rhythm, how important was it for him, even from a confidence standpoint, for all that he's accomplished, to get off to a quick start?
Yeah, no, that helps. I mean, he did last week too. So he came out and we moved it right along, and then he had another one of those series just before half, and then he had it at the end of the game, where he made a couple of nice plays. So, but I think for any quarterback, I think it's important that you can kind of start and develop some rhythm in the game, and I think he did that today. So it's important, yes.
Last one, Nate.
And you praised the defense earlier, but in this 3-game winning streak, is there something that you can point to that tells you that this defense is trending in the right direction? What I guess most impresses you?
Yeah, I think they're playing well together, communicating well, which is so important on defense. There's always adjustments taking place. I mean, these offensive guys in this league are they're smart guys, and they try to get you out of position with their calls, motion shifts. And so to make those adjustments, the back end and front end, to make everything happen the right way, to still cover all the gaps and all the zones in the back end, you got to be sharp. And it's endless hours with that. They do a million walkthroughs going through this, and you got to do it like that. So, and they're getting better at that.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Okay.
Chiefs head coach Andy Reid coming out of what was an enormous win for the Chiefs, and they've been building towards it for a while now. A complete win, a 41-14 win over the Las Vegas Raiders, which improves them to 6-4. A couple things that come out of the press conference, Steve. Andy Reid says that Travarius Ward and Willie Gay were dealing with illnesses tonight. It seemed like they played through some of that. I thought the key quote of that press conference, it sounded like it came from a question by Sam Melliger of the Kansas City Star about what the Chiefs are building and whether or not the Chiefs are back and who they are. And it was essentially alluding to the identity. And Andy Reid said that the Chiefs at a certain point just needed to get down to the nitty gritty and build it. And you have to become that team. And what sticks out to me about this win is now you're 6-4. You're in first place in the AFC West. I still think, okay, to get this bye, it's going to be tough because the Tennessee Titans are a good football team that has an easy schedule in front of them. That being said, it's not out of the realm of possibility. And you look at that 6-4 record, and I know it's become a storyline in Kansas City this week. If they could get this win, they would be back to 6-4. The Chiefs were 6-4 in 2019 when they ended up going on this run and winning a Super Bowl championship. So I think the bigger thing is it seems like this could be the identity of the team. And if this is the true identity of a team, solid offense with that Patrick Mahomes flair that we have seen, as well as a defense to match, who in the AFC do you feel comfortable to say, okay, they could knock this team off? I mean, I think in a sense, the Chiefs have reestablished themselves as a true contender in the AFC. And we felt at a certain point, I think at the beginning of the year, where that was not possible.
Yeah, I mean, they're 0-4 against the top teams in the AFC that they've played so far this season. But the AFC also is just refusing to establish who is that team who's going to knock them off the top of that list. And
Right.
I still need to see them put this thing together a few times in a row against good competition, I think,
Yeah.
before I'm willing to just dive headfirst
Well, Steve,
back into this thing.
we have that's how what's great about how the schedule's worked out. And I talked about levels going into this week where you had basically level 1, level 2 games against the Giants and the Jordan Love Packers with his mom sitting at the top of the stands in outer space watching the game. And okay, you get these good wins against them. Still, you're not feeling good about the offense. Finally, you feel good against a good team, right? I think we can agree that the Raiders are a good team. You get a Cowboys team. Granted, they lost to the Denver Broncos, but I think that was more of a wake-up call game for them that just dismantled the Atlanta Falcons 43-3. You can make a case that could be the best team in the NFC. This could be a Super Bowl preview. And if the Chiefs can do what they did tonight against the Dallas Cowboys team, and then you're 7-4 with a win like that heading into the bye, I think at that point, right, then you would feel comfortable saying, okay, this is a legitimate team, and this is a legitimate team that has a chance to go back to its third straight Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. If they win that game next week at Arrowhead Stadium, then I'll for sure be back on board with this because, yeah, Dallas is really, really good. But this game plan tonight is like what we need from them, right? Because they don't have to put up 41 every time. You just got to know that they can score. And you got to know that the defense can hold up and that's not going to be as bad as it was the first month of the season. And I think there's reasons to believe that this defense can continue to do what they're doing right now because we still haven't even seen, Melvin Ingram had an impact tonight, and he's obviously made a difference in his 2 games with the Chiefs, but I still think there's room for improvement with this pass rush. And so I think the defense can still get better, and the offense just can't turn the ball over, and they just got to be able to consistently put up points when they need to, and that's what they did tonight. And you can just kind of have it in your back pocket that, we still have Patrick Mahomes, and he can go out and throw 5 touchdowns and 400 yards if we really need him to as well. So that should be the approach moving forward is just don't cost yourself games and just do what you did tonight and be a balanced offense that can play defense and you can put up 41 points when you need to.
I want to go through the defensive stats really quickly. I want to make sure we touch upon the defense properly. You had 2 sacks in this game for the Chiefs. Reid had the sack. He also had 2 total quarterback hits. Derek Nottie also had a sack. He had a 1 quarterback hit. L'Jarius Sneed had a quarterback hit and actually led the Chiefs in tackles. And I think that is proper tonight because I just thought he was the most consistent and best Chiefs defensive player and has been for a while now. He was a little bit quiet to start the season. And I think he has now gotten into his own a little bit where you're seeing him make big plays. He's coming off a game in which he had an interception and then just the open field tackling. It just doesn't seem like there could be anyone better in the NFL period right now at tackling. And that's wild to say. And I think, you can make a case that Nick Bolton could rival him on his own team. And I just think the Chiefs have needed for so long someone other than Tyrann Mathieu and Chris Jones to establish defensive attitude and swagger. And I think they're doing that. And I think Sneed and Bolton are 2 key cogs of that.
Yeah, and the early season narrative that, they had to get rid of Spags and this defense was totally gone, like that seems to have totally evaporated. Now, I do feel more confident, and I know I said I need to see them do it another time or 2 before I feel really confident in this team. I am starting to feel confident in the defense, right? Like they made the adjustments that they needed to. Juan Thornhill's getting more snaps and Daniel Sorensen's on the field less, so he's less of a liability for your defense. I know Dan had the pick tonight, but I mean, Derek Carr just kind of threw that one up there. That was more reminiscent of some of Patrick Mahomes' turnovers early in the year. But yeah, I'm kind of more confident in the defense simply because the pass rush is there now. And the pass rush is what I thought it was supposed to be headed into the season. And I would have to imagine they can keep that up. You know, Frank Clark's finally healthy, and I know he had a quiet night tonight, but Jaron Reid stepped up. And we haven't seen anything out of Jaron Reid through 10 weeks of the year. So it was nice to see Jaron Reid have a big impact game. And I don't think that's a coincidence that he finally did in week 10 after they're establishing Melvin Ingram, and they're moving Melvin Ingram around, and they're moving Chris Jones around.
Just the health too, I think, is helping. And I know that sometimes we'll turn to that each and every year and saying, okay, this defense just has to get healthy and then they're going to start playing well. I think you're actually legitimately seeing it. Like, I think Frank Clark is finally healthy. I think Chris Jones is as healthy as he's going to be this year. I know he's dealing with that wrist thing, which he will until he eventually has off-season surgery to kind of get that thing cleaned up. Melvin Ingram is making an impact. That was Jaron Reed's best year at Seattle when Frank Clark was dominant. They feed off each other, and I think you have four guys and really a rotation. Derek Nottie continues to be one of the underrated players on this team. I said I would get to it prior to Andy Reid. I don't want to forget. So Mike Hughes had a fumble off of a punter tonight, a low point for the Chiefs. He's fortunate that the Chiefs won. I just feel bad for him in what will be the film room tomorrow, because now that everyone's feeling good, that's going to be a real lighthearted moment in what was a really nice effort for the Chiefs. I like the wherewithal by Andy Reid in going for it on fourth down. He's starting to understand, and I think it took some time, but I think he's starting to understand a little bit of the analytics behind it. And granted, there are still kick when he uses his gut and he'll kick a field goal on fourth down, and we saw a little bit of that tonight. But there's fourth and short a lot of the time. When Mahomes is rolling and you're feeling good about your effort, and you know, you feel good about the way your unit is playing. And for example, you have Blake Bell that has a quarterback sneak, which was amazing. You had a touchdown on a fourth down play. And then the biggest fourth down play of the game, still, it was a 13-point game at the time, and we heard about it at the press conference, was Tommy Townsend. And just saying, okay, Uncle Dave, you want to roll with this pass to Marcus Kemp? Marcus Kemp, by the way, who doesn't really play a ton of offense on this team. I mean, you are trusting them in that moment, a guy who doesn't throw passes and a guy who doesn't really catch them as of late, to complete a 16-yard play in a key part of the game, which eventually leads to that Darrell Williams high point, end of game, done touchdown for a 38-yarder. That's the moment where if you want to say, okay, how did Stella get her groove back? How did the Chiefs get their swagger back? It's rolling Tommy Townsend, who is a key player for the second week in a row out there to throw a pass to Marcus Kemp.
Yeah, and he delivered a dart to Marcus Kemp.
It was beautiful. That was a beautiful pass.
He had a brilliant game last week. He was like one of our most underrated players. And then this week he is just out there throwing lasers on fourth down. Like, that's what Tommy Townsend does. But I think the biggest thing I was excited about in this game, and we finally saw them start to hit some of the downfield stuff. I know Mahomes missed Tyreek a couple of times, but it's there. It's coming. It's going to happen eventually. Like, Tyreek Hill 50-yard bombs aren't gone. We just haven't seen one in a little bit. It'll happen eventually. But yeah, it was the confidence that they had, that they were able to build off even after that Mike Hughes fumble early in the game, because it felt like, okay, the Chiefs started this one strong. They can get the ball back here. They can go score. Nice, solid return by Mike Hughes, and then he lets the punter force a fumble. So it was like one of those turning points where you're like, ah, man, like this is where it starts to go bad. Like, we've seen this so far this season, but they stayed confident the entire game. Like, they did not let that eat away at them, and that's something that they've really struggled with, because it was when they were in the red zone, and I think it was a direct snap to Blake Bell on a 3rd and short to get them in 1st and goal situation. Like, that type of stuff, that's the stuff that sometimes we scratch our heads about and we're like, come on, Andy, just run a normal play there. But like, when Andy's really feeling himself, he gets away with those little plays like that. And then the fourth down throw by Tommy Townsend, all of that stuff speaks to a team that has found its confidence back. And I think that's why you should be really excited about that.
Steve, I got to wrap up because I got to go do Sunday Sound Off. If you're watching live, you can switch to 41. I'll be talking to Mick Schaefer and whatnot. I want to give you an opportunity to give your final comments, and I'll close up here before I got to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a turning point. I think that end of game pass from Mahomes against the Green Bay Packers was a turning point for him
Yeah.
last week, and hopefully it's only going up from here. It's they got the offensive game plan adjustment that I feel like I've been screaming about for weeks going tonight, and I think they should keep doing that moving forward because it's going to give defenses problems and they can keep putting up points that way. So yes, turning point for the offense. Let's keep going. Let's keep putting up points.
I'm going to just reiterate what I said to start the show. I just think that we got obsessed with Patrick Mahomes needing to be fixed, where I don't know if Patrick Mahomes was ever really broken. He was still that athletic player that just needed, I think, maybe a little bit of time to figure out how defenses were playing him. And I think it took some time. I think in what usually has to be accomplished in an offseason, which is a fixing of a mental approach, the Chiefs have managed to pull off, it seems, based upon the performance tonight, and I think some of the progress we had seen in recent weeks of fixing a quarterback's mental approach and having him play a different way than he had been. And they were able to accomplish it in season. And what's different about that happening in the offseason than happening in the regular season is just you see the growing pains. And to me, it just was an affirmation of, okay, Mahomes is figuring it out. And I think the bigger part of that is if the defense can match what the offense is doing, which there are signs of that as well, you're suddenly in the second half looking at one of the more complete teams in the NFL. Now, they got to do it against the Dallas Cowboys, and I think we know that. But I think you come away from tonight's 41-14 win over the Las Vegas Raiders saying two words for the rest of the NFL. Uh-oh, because you let the Chiefs hang around. You didn't have a team, and you can make a case that the Titans did this to an extent. We'll see if they can keep it up. But you didn't have multiple teams distancing themselves from the Chiefs. The Titans are the only team with more wins than the Chiefs right now. That's amazing to say. The Chiefs have a lot of football in front of them, and you can almost say to an extent they control their own destiny to get the second or third seed in the AFC. And if they're playing this caliber and they can kind of build off this and start playing their best football at the end of the season for a change, they may have a shot that you feel better about than you did last year when they were working through a beat up offensive line. Even though they were able to get those AFC wins against Cleveland and Buffalo, you could tell they were working through some issues there, and they ended up rearing their ugly head in Tampa. You might end up feeling better about this team than you did that team, and it started tonight 41-14 over the Las Vegas Raiders. If you're listening on the Arrowhead Pride podcast channel, we're going to take a quick break and stick around for other press conferences. You heard from head coach Andy Reid. You'll hear from Patrick Mahomes and Tyrann Mathieu, as well as Tyreek Hill after the break. Again, if you're watching us live, we're going to close up the live feed. I'm going to head over to 41, so turn over to that if you want to see some more Chiefs analysis on 41 and what we're going to do over there. Steve, thank you for joining me for tonight. Again, it's a 41-14 win over the Las Vegas Raiders on Sunday Night Football, a huge win for the Kansas City Chiefs. For Steve Serda, I'm Pete Sweeney. Thank you for listening to the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show.